Hey, One More Story listeners, thank you for tuning in to another episode. Each week, the show continues to grow, so thank you to all my incredible guests and listeners who have been sharing One More Story with their friends and family. And if you are enjoying the show, please leave us a review. It's super helpful in boosting the show's visibility. Also, we just released our first ever story pack available to subscribers. It is just the stories from the first 5 episodes, so 10 stories total in one file, nearly 2 hours of stories. It's great for insomniacs and kids on road trips. I would not recommend you listen to it while driving because it will put you to sleep. And as always, parents, if you'd like to skip ahead to the first story, you can find it at the 21-minute, 55-second mark. So sit back, relax, and enjoy tonight's episode. My guest tonight is a prolific and seasoned industry veteran who cut his teeth as an actor and stand-up comedian before going on to direct features and over 1,300 commercials. He is the host and creator of the long-running podcast Respect the Process, and in 2018 launched True Gentleman Industries, a family-run commercial production company. He is also a really nice guy. There's some directors who are yellers, and he is not one of them. Jordan Brady, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Pete. This is just so wonderful that you're doing this show.
I'm having fun doing it.
Do the listeners, they don't know our history, though.
No.
Okay, so listeners, listen to this. I'm going to say circa 2008, so 15 years ago. Pete was the recurring hero of a series, a couple dozen KFC commercials that I was fortunate enough to direct. And I think I inherited you. I don't think I cast you. I think you had already done some. And the client and the ad agency were like, we love this guy because Pete was the likable, snarky hero the women wanted to be with, the men wanted to hang out with him, and he had the chicken. The formula for the commercials was a bit repetitive. Like it was always one nerdy guy had essentially the value meal with a sad hamburger. And then you and another guy had the $5 value meal, which had a big piece of chicken. It was always just bountiful with fries and chicken and a drink. And you were the hero.
You taught me to bite and smile.
Well, if I'm being specific, and any actors listening, I have a patented smile-bite-smile. There's a smile that anticipates the goodness, the bite, and then the smile of enjoyment.
Smile, bite, smile. And it worked every time.
I used to do, in addition to KFC, I did Popeye's chicken commercials. And, oh, you know what? The commercials, these predated KFC. It was a man on the street style campaign that ended up running for 3 or 4 years. And I directed the commercials. And after an exhaustive casting search, guess who became the man on the street? Yours truly. So I put my kids in the commercial. They both got the Coogan account for college. Because it's a SAG gig. And it was basically over my shoulder. And I would direct and interview sometimes real people, sometimes actors, sometimes mixed. And we would cut these commercials. And I had a Russian bookkeeper at the time who would just call me whenever a check came in from directing or a check came in from acting. And then I did the radio spots. I did the in-house, excuse me, Pete, the back of the house announcements. Hey, it's the top of the hour. Let's look at that fryer. Does the grease need cleaned? Take it upon yourself, people. Let's keep this ship running good.
It was a cash cow for you.
Well, the Russian bookkeeper would call and she goes, Jordan, we love this chicken from Popeyes. The chicken money is pouring in. It is a good day. I don't do the accents clearly, but the chicken money was good.
So, yes. So I wanted to talk about your early days in front of the camera, because one of the things in your credits was teen boy in a Baywatch episode. Tell me a little bit about that.
You know, I run a family business and I lean heavily into nepotism. I put my children in the commercials. My first wife was the casting associate on Baywatch, and I was a comedian. And they called at 9 o'clock the night before and said, "Can you come to the beach and do these lines?" That's how I got the Baywatch part. And I teen boy. I was easily 25 years old. I think David Spade was the other teen boy.
That's hilarious.
And we did a shtick together. So I would love to say that I was a great actor and auditioned for Teen Boy and nailed the part, but it was literally, who do you know that can show up tomorrow morning?
And you were that guy. So what ultimately prompted you to make the move behind the camera?
I had hosted a game show as well as a reality show, a couple game shows I hosted back in the early 90s.
MTV, right?
I did one on MTV that no one would remember. It was called Turn It Up. And we did 4 or 5 shows a day for weeks on end. And it was just so fun. And you're with the crew. And I had been shooting with a camera. I'm self-taught filmmaker on the road, and I made so many mistakes. But once I got on a show and I just fell in love with the process, the way things run, and everybody's role, cast, crew, is crucial. Like, we all play a part. And the more I did it, I was like, I like this side of it better than that side of it.
So tell me a little bit about your production company. You started that, in 2018? Did I get that right?
You did get it right. I had a production company with 2 partners from 2010. They folded during the pandemic, but I left my partners in 2018 in silence, like very cloak and dagger. I told them, I said, hey, I'm going to start my own production company without you guys. And they're great guys. We're friends to this day. I said, but I'll stay on your roster, and I'm just going to service my accounts that I've been doing business with for years. So True Gentleman, or True Gent, as we say, Pete, it's mostly just repeat business from years of directing commercials. So in 2018, I didn't do a big launch. I didn't do an ad in the trades. I just laid low, did my gigs, and I did gigs for another company at the same time if they would, get me work. Directing commercials, and I'm assuming with your acting prowess, there are actors listening, like from your friend group and audience.
Right.
The director auditions for the job. Like, we do a Zoom now, we do a treatment, we do a follow-up Zoom. It's it's competitive. So just in 2023, which is the year we're recording this, I went public with True Gent. My son is a director, DP. He's on the roster. My wife is a director, writer, producer. She just did her first feature, came out last summer. Diamond in the Rough, everywhere you find your rom-com streaming. She's on the roster. And so far, it's just us. And then I have some friends that I kind of back pocket and get work. So it's a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
And you are not only very busy making the commercials, you are busy teaching other up-and-coming directors how to do what you do with these commercial boot camps, right?
Correct, sir. So, Pete, that's so nice of you to ask me about that. Commercial directing film school is, I started doing workshops in 2015, just because I'm getting old, and so many people helped me. And then so many people were jerks. Like, they would not overtly, but they would just withhold knowledge. And I never understood that. Like, what if I teach you or tell you, hey, take the lens cap off, or hey, put the light here? How does that hurt me? Like, everybody thinks it's a zero-sum game. If you audition for a part, and I tell actor friends this all the time, if you audition for especially commercials and you prepared, you have a take, you have a point of view, you're comfortable, like you did the work, and you go to the audition and you don't get the job, trust me, it had nothing to do with you. There
Right.
could have been just a laundry list of things, like you look like the client's ex-husband. well, we just used a redhead last time, or there's so many things. It's not about you. But if you get the job, it's all about you, baby. It's all about you. Like, oh my God, did you see the way Pete turned and looked at her? That was, we got to do that. We got to write that down, that we remember for Pete to turn and look. And to you, it's just it's a arrow in your quiver, right? That's what you did. But to us,
Right.
when we find the winner, we're just like obsessing over how great the actors were.
And it feels good.
It feels good, right? It's like you won.
Because you don't get a lot of wins.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's true. It is a numbers game. You know, I lost 3 jobs in a row in the spring, and it was slow. And each one had like one time the agency wrote me a little email how great it was, and the client wanted to go with the incumbent director, which I'm like, in the bigger sense, that's good. I like that loyalty. And then on the next one, I lost the job and got a nice email saying, well, you know, you were the incumbent and we were changing it up and there were new people. So like, you can't go to the bank and say, would you like to read these nice emails?
Exactly. Well, I've got glowing coverage on scripts I've written that haven't seen the light of day.
Right. So you know you're not doing it wrong. It's just numbers.
Right.
And I think the trick for any creative person is to not bow down. Don't bend the knee to the monkey brain. Like the monkey brain is just like, oh my gosh, you know, the imposter syndrome. I'm not good. This isn't going to work. What do I do? I'm at the end now. And so a lot of what I teach at like commercial directing boot camp, and I have some online courses now, thanks to the pandemic, QR codes and online courses. That's what came out of the pandemic. On the good side, there was a lot of bad stuff that happened.
Yes, there was, which we have limited time, so we can't get into all that. But can you just briefly tell us where, if there are up and coming commercial directors who are interested in your boot camp and learning from you, where they can find that?
It's so easy to find me. And I want to be, in all sincerity, right? I really want to be an accessible mentor to filmmakers that want to go into commercials. Like it's so micro niche. You go to commercialdirectingfilmschool.com. It's all there.
Let me ask you this about the process of auditioning and looking at actors. How do you feel? I mean, I have some strong opinions on my side of things. How do you feel about self-tape versus in-person with the growth of the self-tapes?
I feel the actor is at a disadvantage with self-tapes because you don't have a person running the session, and the casting directors and the people that work in the casting director's office are really talented, inventive, creative people, and they'll delete a bad take. They'll give you direction. And the self-tape, sure, you save parking fees, and you don't have to drive across town, and you don't have to put the baker's outfit in the trunk and put it on. By the way, that's a myth, Pete. You don't, if you're auditioning for the chef, you don't have to wear the chef outfit. We are going to have a stylist who is going to find the perfect chef hat for you. Like, yeah, maybe don't wear a suit or like a tutu, you know, just be generic and do the work. You don't have to wear the jersey. You don't have to put the smuts under your eyes if you're a football player. We're going to do all that.
I think the self-tape versus in-person is sort of a divisive. I mean, I know actors who absolutely love self-tapes. I was working more before COVID when I could get in rooms, because I agree the casting directors who I've known for 2 decades now are fantastic, and they have amazing people who work for them, with them, running camera, running the sessions, and they want you to be that guy, and they will do everything they can to get you to that. And you're sort of operating in a vacuum. You're reading this breakdown. I had a commercial audition a couple months ago. They basically wanted me to shoot the spot.
In your house, in front of the sheet that you hung up in front of the baseball cards.
Exactly. No, but this was a car commercial, driving with friends. It's like, hey, call up some of your friends. I'm like, my friends have lives and families, and like they do stuff like, you know, they're like, yeah, if you can get 4 of your best friends, like it's a night out on the town, and then you stop at this overlook, and it would be really great if it could be at sunset, and it's like, do you want me to just shoot this commercial for you? You know, and it's like, if I were to go in person, they would have some chairs set up, and they do 3 different setups, and you'd be in the car, you'd be out of the car, there'd be a reaction, you know, and they'd put it all together, and they would walk you through it. And yeah, I grumbled about driving to Santa Monica at 4:00 on a Friday, but it ended up, I mean, if I'm looking back and comparing the periods of time, it was a much more lucrative time. It was worth the drive.
And you're a performer. So having an audience, even if it's an audience of 1, look, I could go on about the electrons in the room when you're there. Like, this is a good conversation, and we're Zoom. I can imagine there'd be a little bit of extra je ne sais quoi if we were in the room together. Mm-hmm. And I find that in podcasting and in auditions, if you've got it's a comedy and you're doing your bit, and the operator in the casting room is holding back laughter, that's going to feed the performer.
Yeah.
Everybody wants everybody to win. We pray for an embarrassment of riches when it comes to choosing the actors. So it's a fallacy to think, yo, the casting director was mean, or, you know, you go, which I don't know if people still think that, but I remember when I was an actor, people would like, you know, oh, she's tough. No, they just want the best.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to hear a little bit about your podcast, because is that correct? It's 11 years old. You're like a pioneer in the podcasting space. It's a veteran podcast. Is that right?
Pioneer, Pete, makes me sound like I'm okay. You know, burning wood and wearing a raccoon hat. Like I'm a pioneer. Yeah, fire up the podcast, Cookie. No, you're
an old timer.
It'll be 10 years. It started September 2013. I had lost a job to a director who I competed against a lot, and I had won some, and he had won some, and we did some digging. We had actually met once at Comedy Central before we were both into commercials years prior. But I lost this gig, and I was like, you know, I was so mad at that person, at that director. I was like, forget him. And then I started laughing. I can see it in my mind. I was in my little basement office in Los Angeles, and I looked out the window and I started laughing because I had done a 28-page treatment. It was for Kmart. It was going to be like a 5-day shoot, which would have been a lot of money. Commercial directors are highly overpaid. And I started laughing, Pete, because I thought, no, you know what? Good for him. I bet that guy's high-fiving his wife, and they're going to go to dinner, and they're going to buy the kids Slurpees and new jeans and fancy tennis shoes. Like, it's celebrate. And it was literally a shift, a paradigm shift in thinking that it is not a zero-sum game for the actor, for the director, for the producer getting the script made, whatever. This is my journey. This one was not meant to be. And this whole theory, by the way, which could just be me rationalizing the loss, but it's all based on you did the work and you respected the process. So I reached out on Facebook. We were all on Facebook in 2013. And I said, hey, I want to say congratulations on the gig. You know, it's a big job. I know you must be happy. And he wrote back like, wow, thank you. You know, I wrote this 28-page treatment, and I thought you were going to get it, Jordan. I said, I wrote a 28-page treatment. And we started going back and forth of how ridiculous these treatments are. And I said, you know, have a good shoot. And he was the second guest on the podcast, because I realized it took about a year to do the podcast, but I realized I don't get to have conversations with other directors. You know, there's no bowling league, there's no softball game. And if you're not looking at it's competitive, like I guess boxers are competitive. Like, we're going to step into the ring. I want to win. I play to win. But it was great to just start talking to the sisters and brothers that do the same thing. And that's how Respect the Process was born. You can get it anywhere you get your pod on. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Amazon.
So with everything you do, between the podcast, the commercial gigs, you're a grandfather. Congratulations.
Thank you.
How do you unwind at night?
This is a segue into telling the story, I think.
I'm full of segues.
My go-to fall asleep thing, I hate to admit it, but the addictive TikTok can put me to sleep.
Really?
It can put me to sleep because I'm scrolling with my thumb. I'm a left-handed scroller. I'm holding the phone and I scroll and I scroll. And, you know, there's so many, fascinating things. And the algorithm is so evil. Like for a while, I was on this run of people shoeing horses. Like just my feed was so many. I know more about clipping toenails off horses than I ever thought I needed to. But I fall asleep quickly that way. And I drop the phone. Like sometimes and the phone drops out of my hand onto the bed and I wake up and it's hours later. The other thing I do, Pete, is I have a slow metabolism and slow heart rate, like medically slow heart rate. And if I use a little mind power and just meditate, I can fall asleep. I could show you, but it wouldn't be good podcasting. I can do it in like 3 minutes. I can fall asleep on a plane, in an airport, in a chair, on the couch, in a busy mall. I could just sit and go, okay, I am going to fall asleep, and I can fall asleep.
So are you ready to dive into the story duel?
I am nervous. I'm excited. I'm giddy. I hope I can entertain both the parents and let's put these kids to sleep.
All right. So the word is socks.
Socks.
Once upon a time, there was a young cat, a kitten, named Three Socks. And she was called Three Socks because she was a black cat, a black kitten. She had 3 white paws. The 4th was black, like the rest of her fur. And she was a wild kitten. She lived in the forest. And she had lots of forest friends. She would often be seen running around with her favorite dog, Jasper. Jasper was her best friend, and Jasper, in comparison to Three Socks, was gigantic. Jasper was a 160-pound mastiff, one of these big, slobbery dogs. And he was extremely gentle. There were times when Three Socks would get herself into a predicament in the forest. You know, there's lots of hazards in the forest. There was a quicksand spot, which is something I feel like we've forgotten about recently. That was a big thing in the 80s. We were always worried about quicksand. I don't know if quicksand just went away or we just got consumed being scared of other things, whatever the fear du jour is. But quicksand, for a time, really captured the imagination of young people and drove fear deep into their hearts. So there was one day when Three Socks was playing a little too closely to the quicksand pond, because that's where all the mice used to hang out. Because mice, for whatever reason, they just thought quicksand was cool, and they were pretty spry, and they could kind of get in and out of it. They had sort of adapted, you know how animals just adapt to things over time. But Three Socks, even though she was an agile, athletic young little kitten, quicksand was very dangerous to her. She always tried to stay as far away as she could, but the mice that hung out on the shores of Quicksand Pond were always just too enticing. Well, one day she got too close to the quicksand pond and she yelled out for Jasper.
Jasper had been looking at a campsite that some humans had just vacated. Now, Jasper, being a large dog at 160 pounds, was always hungry. And Jasper found at this campsite that the campers had left behind a couple of dirty plates full of macaroni and cheese. Jasper had heard about macaroni and cheese in the wild, but living in the wild as a wild dog, he had never come across it. It was something of folklore that the raccoons had told him about. So Jasper was distracted, licking up these plates, the remnants on the plates of mac and cheese, when he heard, "Jasper, Jasper, help, help." Well, he knew right away that was his friend Three Socks. So he's thought, I really do like mac and cheese. There's a couple of plates left, but maybe this is just a game that Three Socks is playing with me. And then something went off inside of Jasper's head called intuition. He said, "You know what?" to himself, "My friend's in trouble." So he ran like a stallion through the woods, jumping over logs, running under briars, bouncing off of rocks. He actually went in a big circle, trying to find that scary quicksand spot. Luckily, his friend Three Socks was still calling out for him. Jasper finally got to the edge of the quicksand, and he screeched to a halt. Leaves were flying everywhere, and some mice on the side were snickering. "What are you going to do about your friend now, big dog? That'll teach you, Three Socks, to eat our family." Jasper wanted to attack those mice, but he had to save his friend. Three Socks was up to her armpits in quicksand and sinking rather quickly. Jasper yelled out, "You sink quickly in quicksand. That's how it got its name." Three Socks said, "Don't worry about that. Just get me out of here." So Jasper looked all around, and he thought, back at that campsite, the campers had left a fishing pole up against a tree. At first he thought, those were forgetful, sloppy campers. No matter. He ran back to the campsite, grabbed the fishing pole in his mouth, went straight back under the briars, over the rock, jumped the log, and put that fishing pole out for Three Paws to grab a hold of.
So Three Socks reached out with one of her little sock paws. The other one had already been taken by the quicksand, and she couldn't quite reach that fishing pole. And Jasper had gotten as close to the edge of the quicksand as he could, and she was still just an inch away. She was just starting to sink and sink and sink. And these mice that were on the shore, they were laughing. They were having a good time. Somebody had brought some music, and they started cooking mice food. They were having like a barbecue. It was like a big party celebrating the demise of Three Socks. It was rather disturbing, but you can imagine this cat had grown up tormenting them and eating their family. That's what cats do. They eat mice. And they were just having a blast. Like, all these mice, they started blowing up balloons. I mean, it was a huge party. It was like a quinceañera. I mean, it was so festive. There was music and dancing, all while this poor little kitten was sinking. Well, one of the mice, named Morris, sort of took pity on sinking Three Socks. And Morris looked around at all these other mice just having a party, just having a blast. And he looked over at his buddy, whose name was Jimmy. And he said, "Jimmy, I know this is a lot of fun. Three Socks has been torturing us and hunting us for years now, but I have an idea. I think we should save her." And Jimmy was like, why would we do that? He said, "Well, one, I think it's the right thing to do, because I can't just sit and watch this kitten get swallowed by quicksand, and I won't be able to sleep at night, and my conscience just won't let me do it. And I know the natural order of things is that cats eat mice and we're supposed to hate them, but I just watching it, I can't do it." And then twofold, I think if we save her, we can cut a deal so she leaves us alone. So they hatched a plan.
So while Morris and Jimmy went back to the mouse hut to hatch a plan to save Three Socks, Jasper was still tugging away, but he didn't want to tug too hard because Three Socks was only holding on to the fishing pole by one paw. Out of the corner of his eye, Jasper winked at Three Socks as if to say, I think Jimmy and Morris are going to help us. But he couldn't be too sure. You can never trust a woodland mouse. Three Socks was holding on by his one black paw. We no longer saw the other three white paws. He was holding on to that fishing pole, but the quicksand was too porous. It was engulfing Three Socks, so that now just his one paw on the fishing pole and his little head with his neck up reaching for breath held on. And Jasper thought, maybe if I made the quicksand less quick, it would save me a little time until the mice get back with their plan. So Jasper wedged the fishing pole between two rocks, which is very hard for a large dog because they have no thumbs. He did it with a paw in his mouth, and he proceeded to vomit up some of the mac and cheese he had eaten at that campsite. And he projectile vomited the mac and cheese into the quicksand. The quicksand turned into a cement, hardening so that he wouldn't sink any longer. Three Socks was safe for now. But as the mac and cheese, a little bit of vomit, some chewed up bones that Jasper had also thrown up, mixed with the quicksand, we had a new dilemma. Three Socks, with one paw and his head sticking out, was now encased in the hardening mixture. What were they to do? The mouse party continued. The mice laughed. They walked out into the hardened quicksand and taunted Three Socks. They danced around him, sometimes farting on him. Well, Jasper wanted to stroll out there himself, and he tested it with his big paw. It wasn't going to hold his weight. At 160 pounds, he would have cracked it and everyone would have fallen in the quicksand. Mice, Three Socks, and himself. He was about to give up hope, but he couldn't let his friend be there alone. Just then, Morris and Jimmy came back, and they had a plan. They had gotten some cheese from a local farmhouse. They waved at their friends and said, mice friends, it's getting boring tormenting this cat. Leave her alone. We've got cheese. It was a cheddar cheese, which is a favorite in the woods. They don't get it often. Well, all the mice came over and started nibbling on that cheese. Jimmy and Morris had saved the day. And Jimmy turned to Morris and said, you know that cat Three Socks ate my Aunt Jenny. And Morris said, let's save that story for another day. So Jasper picked up the fishing pole with his teeth, used it as a hammer, and stretching out his body as far as he could, he used it to chisel and break up the concrete-like substance formed from his mac and cheese vomit and quicksand. Soon, one white paw came out to join Three Socks' black paw, and he wiggled his way around. And then their friend Leonard, an owl who had lived in the woods a long time, swooped down and started pecking around to further loosen the concrete. And between Leonard and Jasper, little Three Socks wiggled out another white paw and then another white paw until finally even her tail was free from the quicksand. We never saw Leonard again. He flew away instantly, an unsung hero of this story. Three Socks climbed out, licked her own fur clean, saying, this quicksand has an odd taste. Jasper laughed and said, that's the mac and cheese I had from the campsite. Three Socks said, you didn't have to tell me that part. Three Socks jumped on Jasper's back. They rode off into the night. to live another day. The end.
Jordan Brady, are you ready for your solo story?
Oh man, this one really has me nervous.
The word is pole, as in like North Pole, South Pole, pole.
Once upon a time, in a small village in Eastern Europe, there was a large pole in the center of town. It had been there for generations and generations, to the point that the townspeople really didn't know the purpose of the pole. It was the source of much joy, and it was also the source of many arguments. For instance, the baker and the butcher had almost come to a fist fight over the origin of the pole. The baker said it was an ancient rod that would point to the North Star and let the townspeople know, like a calendar, what time of year it was. And the butcher said, well, that's ridiculous. When it's cold, it's winter. When it's hot, it's summer. And they could never agree. Well, one day the mayor decided he would put all this tension to a rest, and he decided to throw the summer pole celebration. Everyone would bring their specialties and gather around the pole in the town and have a feast. At first, everyone was resistant. The local tailor and the shoemaker, a cobbler, said, "This is not a good idea, Mayor. We don't make food." The mayor said, "Well, cobbler, you can bring shoes for everyone. Some people in our town only have one pair of shoes. This celebration, the Summer Pole Fest, will be a chance for people to get new shoes. You may even meet some new travelers that have settled in our village." The tailor said, "I don't know everyone's sizes." And the mayor said, "That's okay. Don't bring clothes. Bring your tape measure and some thread, and you can help people mend their old clothing and maybe take measurements and give them some new clothing." The butcher said, begrudgingly, "I guess I could bring a ham and a side of lamb. I also have some kangaroo meat that I've imported from Africa." The baker rolled his eyes and said, "Kangaroos aren't in Africa, they're in Australia." And the butcher said, "I never studied geography. Give me a break." The baker said, "I shall make my famous crescent rolls, called croissants, on the other side of Europe." Well, you can imagine that all the townspeople soon were enthused, challenging each other what could they contribute to the Summer Pole Festival. This would be a chance to unite everyone in the village, building camaraderie. The mayor was asked, what is he going to bring? And the mayor said, "I'm going to bring more great ideas like the one I had." The townspeople stared at him and then all nodded and said, "You're right, Mayor. We thank thee," because that's how they talked back then. They said thee. "We thank thee for coming up with this Summer Pole Festival idea." Well, the night before the festival, a strange man had come into town. He was on the run from a nearby village. He had stolen some fire, and he was running through the night with a fire stick. Now, all the elements from everybody's shop, the meats, the shoes, the fabric, even gold and some lamps and small home appliances had been gathered around the pole. Everyone trusted everyone in this village. After all, they were a small village in ancient times. There was no such thing as mistrust. Well, luckily, one boy couldn't sleep that night. He woke his sister and said, "Sister, look." The brother and sister looked out the window. The older sister knew exactly what to do. She would call the authorities. So she took her walkie-talkie and tuned it to the police channel and called the chief of police. It was a little late to be getting a call, especially from a young person, but the police chief said, "What's going on? Why are you calling? Is this an emergency?" And the older sister said, "Yes, it is. That's why I'm using this walkie-talkie. I wouldn't call wolf, as they say. This is a real problem. There's a strange man I've never seen in town before. He's got a fire stick." The police chief said, "We call it a torch." The young girl said, "Okay, I've never seen fire. This torch the man is carrying seems awful dangerous, and he's putting it very close to all the items our village has gathered and put around the pole of celebration. I'm worried and suspicious he may do something." The police chief said, "You kids stay put. We'll handle it." Within moments, the police chief and her police officers surrounded the pole, sneaking into the town square, for they didn't want to startle the man with the torch, or he may set everything ablaze. They thought they had him when he waved the fire stick at the police force. All of them were scared. This was new. No one had ever attacked someone in this peaceful village. The man made a run for it, and he went down the cobblestone street, took a left in the alley, jumped up onto the roof, went roof to roof, waving his fire stick torch, threatening to burn down the village. Well, the police officers gave chase. They weren't afraid. They knew that they had to save the town. Because it was a small town, and this man was from another village, he quickly got lost and ended up back at the pole of celebration in the middle of town. The police people cornered him and said, "There's no escaping now. We know your escape route, and you're outnumbered. Why are you here? Why would you do a bad thing and set these things on fire?" And the man said, "Set these things on fire? Oh no, that is not my intention. You have judged a book by its cover, which you should never do. I am here to teach you all about the benefits of fire. You see this kangaroo meat and this ham? You're going to get sick. It's not cooked. It's cured, but it tastes so much better if you actually cook it." And there in the middle of the night, in the middle of town, the man used his fire. A knife cut off a piece of kangaroo meat and stuck it over the flame of his torch. The police people smelled just like a summer grill, this aroma of yummy kangaroo meat. And they said, "May we try it?" And the man said, "Of course, that's why I came here. I've traveled all the way from Australia. I'm not from the neighboring village. I've been eating kangaroo all my life, and I wanted you to enjoy it. My cousin told me you bought some from him, and that's why I journeyed here." The police officers apologized, and the police chief said, "Sir, we want to grant you citizenship to our small village. You are welcome here any time. Would you spend the night?" And the man said, "I'm a traveler. I should be on my way. But you people are so nice that I'm going to stay for your big celebration tomorrow. Can you offer me a place to sleep?" And the police chief said, "Well, let's not get carried away. No one's going to trust you in their home. But you can sleep in that stable over there with some of the local goats." So the man went over and with his flaming torch went into the pen with the goats. Luckily, the older sister and her little brother had run out in their pajamas and said, "Wait! Don't go in that stall with all that hay and your flaming torch. You'll go up in a blaze." And the man said, "You're right. Good catch." And he handed over his flaming torch to the young girl and said, "Take care of my fire stick until the morning." The next morning, all the townspeople gathered around to celebrate the unity and the camaraderie of the village. They all dined on delicious meats that were cooked for the first time in their lives. They forgot about the origins of the pole in the center of town, and no one really cared. For from that day on, the celebration of the pole happened every summer, twice a year. The end.